We shall name him Casper, the friendly piston. America 2.0 build engine teardown starts now. This is a 2000 Yz250. Taking the top end apart on this bike and many others like it is pretty simple. We got about 5 bolts here for the reeds, 6 up top for the cylinder head, 4 bolts down here, 1 behind this cover to remove the cylinder. Remove these 4 bolts for the cover. You got your governor linkage with 1 bolt that's holding in your power valve shaft and the linkage to the shaft. 4 bolts here, remove this cover, 3 bolts inside to remove the power valve shaft assembly. Enough chit chat, let's get to it. We're going to start by popping off the cylinder head. There she goes. Well, would you look at that? Kind of looks like a ghost with no head. Interesting. The head itself seems to be in good shape. Either way, that's not going to matter. Cover should just pop off like so. Oh yeah, the gasket came off. Will it come off the cover? Oh! Boys, that's almost unheard of. I would walk 500 miles. There she goes. We had some sort of leaking seal to be expected. Got the hours for it. This is the bolt I was talking about to undo the linkage, and this Phillips bolt right here is what's holding our power valve shaft in, along with these 3 right here. There's a little slot right here, and you see that hole at the bottom? That's for a punch. Makes it a lot easier to remove and ensures that you don't break anything trying to remove the bolt. Bob's your uncle, Susan's your grandmother. This pulls off with a little perseverance. Careful of the spacer in behind there. Remove this bolt, this little piece here that slides into your power valve shaft to prevent it from walking out on you. Air boot. No rips, no tears, no cracks. Whew, those have been in there a while. Now we can attack the cylinder. We got 1 bolt here, 1 down in here, and another right up here. Don't forget your little dowel pins. That base gasket has seen better days. I'm actually surprised that it's not completely stuck to the cylinder. Let's see what the cylinder is looking like. Still see slight hatchet pattern. A little bit of vertical scoring. Nothing that the nail catches on, so it's just light markage. Makes sense. This cylinder has the same amount of hours as the complete engine. Therefore, it's to be expected. You can tell these have been in there for a while. Hey, come up. I know you wanna. That's it. 1, 2. I'm gonna remove the 3 screws I was telling you guys about that hold the power valve assembly together. 2, 3. That shaft is gonna slide out this way, just like so. When you're taking all these pieces out, make sure you lay them down on the bench exactly how you took them out so that you don't get mixed up when it comes time to put them back together. Take some pictures if you don't think you're gonna remember. It'll save you a lot of hassle in the long run. I have another 4 bolts in here to remove the power valves themselves, along with our 2 end caps on each side. Crack these free. Make sure you are using the correct bits when taking these out. The last thing you want to do is strip these ones. Out comes your side power valve linkage. As these cams move back, they ride with these little pins here, causing your power valves to open and close. That should slide right out. Oh, well shit. I need a center power valve. Now the side power valves, those should just pop out of here. Yep. Stripped down, ready to be sent out for machining. Last but not least, we're going to take this piston off of here. Ow! I just stabbed myself with the clip. Springs aren't stuck. There isn't a whole bunch of carbon like people say is going to happen if you run caster. Ha! That's better. I like that. Let's get this thing ready to split some cases. We'll start with things I should have done while the engine was in the bike, like the kickstart. Case saver, definitely going to be reusing that on the build. It's going to tie in nicely.
That was easy.
The shifter, some would argue this, but I find it easier on the bike. Couple love taps, don't go too crazy and start wiggling. Lose your wedge, but keep wiggling. Bob's your uncle, Susan's your grandmother. Should have probably drained the oil too, but this actually worked out pretty well with no mess. No glitter or chunks, but beautiful tabarnak. Flywheel puller, making life easy. Thread that on there and get to popping. Satisfying. Dang, that flywheel's seen some better days. Don't forget the Woodruff key. Before you remove your stator bolts, find your ignition timing mark and make sure you know where it is. If you can't find it, make one. Out comes the stator. Nice to see it's in good shape. Remove the little retainer bolt for the clutch linkage and that'll pull right out. Bend down the tabs, one hugga, low duggas, that nut'll come right off. The sprocket's seen better days. I found this behind my sprocket and I asked you to guess what it is. Well, it is vent hose. That explains where the missing vent hose on my carb went. Next up, the clutch case. I like to break free all the bolts by hand first, then zip them off. Yes, you can use the impact right off the bat. Just remember, low huggas, no duggas. Or you could end up using a drill, extractors, or some helicoils. Be gentle with the mallet and you don't need a screwdriver, it should wiggle off. Turn the linkage to pop up the governor and twist it to pull it out. Remove the 2 bolts on the linkage and inspect the arm for wear. It typically wears a flat spot and maybe don't drop it. Now the water pump. First thing, remove the cover. Don't forget your dowel pins. This one's stuck, we're gonna get it later. Now the water pump cover's out of the way, remove the governor linkage. Unthread the impeller. If you have an OEM impeller, you probably have a spacer in behind there. Push the shaft through and out comes the gear. These springs are the reason I got my Magura hydraulic clutch. Have a little gander at the pressure plate here. Looks pretty good. Slide the push rod bearing out of there and inspect. Pull out the push rod as well and inspect it for wear and signs of damage. And pull out the clutch plates. Low huggas, no duggas. Pull off the inner basket, check it for wear. Those little marks you see, yeah, make sure they're not notches. Spacer. Outer clutch basket, same song and dance. Inspect it for wear. If there's notches, you can either file them down or replace it. Mine looks good, so we're gonna reuse it. Slide off the needle bearing and the collar that goes inside it. And one last washer, spacer, shim, whatever you want to call it. Take the spring out of its hole and remove tension from the kickstart gear and pull it out. Be aware of the shim that goes in behind it. Remove the snap ring so you can pull off the idler gear. Be aware there is a shim between the gear and the snap ring. Remove the 2 crank seal retainers. One of them is holding the spring for your ratchet pull. Remove the bolt and pull it out of there. Be careful, there is a shim in behind here as well. Slide out the shift shaft, inspect it as well, and you guessed it, there's a shim behind there too. Remove the 2 bolts for the shift drum ratchet assembly. Be careful, this collar likes to fall off on you. And so do the dogs. There's little springs in there, they like to fly out. Remove the center bolt for the ratchet drum and that'll lift right out. Last bolt is for the gears on the crank. Lift that up. This one doesn't matter which way it goes on, however this one does, so make sure you keep that in mind. Slide off the collar on the crank. Remove this dowel pin and this dowel pin. Last collar on the tranny output shaft. Splitting cases. Starting with the clutch cover, pop the kickstart shaft seal out of there. Then the water pump shaft seal. Install your blind hole bearing puller. Don't ask me why I decided to do the governor bearing first, but anyways, then set it up on the water pump bearing and pull it. Last water pump seal, one good tap with a hammer should come right out. Now the stuck dowel pin from part 2. Little bit of heat in the old tug and twist gets it done. Governor linkage seal is the one part in the entire engine that I always forget exists. Now the meat and patates, let's split the cases. There's a few bolts on the side and the rest run along the bottom. I personally like to break them free by hand and then run them out with the impact. Steel and aluminum, you never know, and I'm not trying to do helicoils. Come on out of there, yo. Set up the case splitter. This thing makes life so much easier. When you're doing this, go nice and easy so the cases don't bind. Try staying as even as possible. If it binds up, tap it with a rubber mallet. And that right there means we are good to go. Remove the splitter. Now separate the 2 cases. The tranny typically stays in the other case on these bikes, so that was weird, not that it really matters. It still comes out the same way. Keep track of your shift forks, but they are marked if you get confused. Seeing as you're watching me turn a ratchet, I'd like to point out the Caster 927 is doing its job. I haven't found anything wrong with the crank or bearings. How'd you make it past part 2? It's time to play whack-a-bearing, but first we gotta remove all the bearing retainers. On this bike, there's a 1 piece down here with 2 bolts, a second one down here, well actually 2 individual ones, and a third one in the other case. Well, 2. Ready for Pound Town. Those last 2 were uneventful. Solid game of whack-a-bearing right there. Bonus level whack-a-seal. Spa beautiful tabarnak. Hit the last bearing with the blindside puller. Now the other case, output shaft bearing came out nice and easy. Output shaft seal, shift shaft seal, clutch linkage seal, and the ignition seal. Dusty.
These are great, but you can also use bread and a punch. Last but not least, the 2-nut trick to remove the studs. If you do remove yours, keep in mind sometimes one is longer than the other, like I have here. Make sure you know where they go. America 2.0 engine is completely torn down and ready to be Cerakoted. It's new colors. 2007 Yz250F build starts next week. Once again, thanks for watching.